Hello once again. In this series, we're talking all about auctions, and I'm joined by someone who's very skilled, knows all about auctions. Cate Bakos is a buyer's agent, catebakos.com.au if you want to get more information about what Cate does. But you know, one of the things that struck me is that many people, and I'm an agent, so I've had to talk to sellers about and buyers about buying a property or selling a property at auction. There are a number of misconceptions, a number of myths about auction and how it works. Cate Bakos is joining me to dispel just a few of those and make you feel more comfortable if you have to get along and bid at an auction in the next couple of weeks, or in fact if you're looking at selling your property by auction. Cate, welcome to the show and thanks for your time again.
G'day Kevin, it's great to be here.
Cate, what have you found are some of the more common misconceptions that you'd just like to talk about now?
Yeah, a lot of people assume that when you go to auction, you're bidding unconditionally. Now, you are bidding without a 3-day cooling off. We all know that. In the various states, that changes a little bit, but no cooling off in Victoria for 3 days either side of a public auction. But it doesn't mean that you are bidding unconditionally if you've asked special permission and been granted some conditions. Now, it is rare, and they're probably not likely to agree to something like a finance clause or a building and pest inspection clause, but there might be other little conditions that you've asked for, such as if you're an investor, being allowed to use the photos to advertise it prior to settlement for rental and being able to run some people through before you settle. Or it might be something like moving in earlier before settlement on what we call a license agreement, if you're wanting to inhabit the property before you settle. So there are all kinds of little conditions that aren't uncommon for vendors and agents and vendor solicitors to agree to. So it doesn't mean that you can't have conditions. It just means that you have to pre-organise them and get permission. That's one of the first ones.
Yeah, and even the settlement time can be varied as well, can't it, Cate? Doesn't it have to be 30 or 45 days?
That's right. So when the auctioneer stands out the front and says whatever days are on offer, we often hear 30, 60, 90. That doesn't mean that you're bound to slotting into one of those three. You can pre-arrange any settlement date that you can agree on before the auction. And the same goes for deposit. You might not have a checkbook. A lot of younger buyers don't carry around checkbooks, and so they might be familiar with an EFT, or they might wish to put down a small holding deposit and then go to the bank on Monday and sort out the balance. Or for some buyers who don't have 10% on hand, they might be granted a special request where they can just proceed with 5%. So everything is negotiable. We just have to remember that we can't negotiate on Saturday. We do have to get ourselves in order and organise any variations to what's on offer prior to the auction. And we need to understand that the agent will probably want the vendor and the vendor solicitor to agree to this, and solicitors' offices close at 5 o'clock. We all know that. So we need to get our ducks in a row and organise variations well before the end of Friday.
And I think we need to understand too that when we do ask for special conditions, that if they're granted, because it's a level playing ground, they also have to be made available to other bidders as well, Cate?
That's a really interesting question, and it's come up many times before in the past. In some states, that is the fact. In Victoria, we don't need it to be announced what the variations are. We just need it to be announced that there might be others in the crowd who have alternate terms. They can't reasonably reject someone having matching terms, but it doesn't necessarily have to be announced in your state.
If a bidder, under those circumstances, and this is a question without notice, if a bidder were to say, well, what are those conditions? Are we allowed to know? Should they be disclosed?
Yeah, I believe they should, and I think it would be very unlikely that an agent wouldn't come forward in the crowd and talk one-on-one with that person. Bearing in mind the auction is probably rolling, so they're not about to stop the auction to debrief someone on someone else's arrangements. But if it means that they'll encourage another bidder, I would confidently say that most agents would say, if you need those variations too, let's talk about it. But sometimes when we have asked for variations, we've been requested to deliver some proof that we're a reliable bidder. So, for example, if it's a 5% deposit down, the agent may say that the vendor's willing to consider your request, but they'd really like to see your pre-approval letter or something like that. So in a situation where you've provided evidence to back up your request, it might not be on offer to someone else, and the agent might simply say, I'm sorry, it's too late notice.
Yeah, gee, that's a very good point. Can I just swing the table a bit and get away from buyers and talk about sellers in a moment? One of the popular misconceptions that I've found over the years is that many sellers believe if they go to auction, they just have to take whatever's offered to them on the day. There is a reserve. Maybe you could just quickly talk us through the reserve process. How firm is that? And, what rights does the seller have to refuse an offer during auction?
A seller is bound to state their reserve before the auction starts, and they may wish to move that reserve, so bring it down at the halftime show, as we call it. So if they haven't hit reserve and the agents all go inside for that mid-auction debrief and then come out, they have the right to move their reserve. But if they don't hit reserve at auction, they're not bound to take the best offer. It's their property and it's their rules. They can hold out for a new buyer to come into the mix, or they can hold out for the highest bidder to be prepared to increase their offer. Now, their willingness to accept an offer will be based on two things. Firstly, their own current set of circumstances. So if they have to sell and they've got time pressure, they'll probably be more amenable to a disappointing offer. And also the agent's recommendations in light of the market situation. So if we're in a really strong seller's market and they've had a disappointing auction outcome, the agent might say, this was a bit of a surprise and we're disappointed for you, but in the face of the market that we're dealing with, we recommend that you hold out because we think we can find another buyer, or we can work with this current buyer and get you a better offer. Now, if it's a really tough market though, the agent might say, look, we got it wrong and what we thought was there isn't there, and we're pretty confident that this might be the best offer you could get. So when it's a collaborative conversation and the agent's providing the vendor with market sentiment and their own thoughts on the campaign, it really is up to the vendor.
Well spoken, Cate. Thank you so much. There's so much for us to learn, and we could talk to you for hours, but we're out of time for now. Cate Bakos is a buyer's agent. You can reach her at her website, catebakos.com.au. I want to remind you that the auctions kick back and our auction reporting with CoreLogic is back on stream later this week. Kevin Brogan will be back on Friday to kick off our preview of the weekend activities. That's coming up this Friday for CoreLogic, and that is Kevin Brogan will be joining me, and we'll have a look then. Cate, I wanted to take this opportunity just to thank you especially for your contribution to the continuation of this show over the summer series. It's been a delight. You've got so much information. I look forward to having you back. And of course, Cate is a regular contributor on Property TV too, so watch out for her insightful tips there. Cate, thanks again for your time.
It's been a blast. Thank you so much.